the Parsha Lech-Lecha starts off with the words, V'yema Hashem el Avram, that Hashem says to Avram. At this point, he doesn't have the Hey in the name. He's still called Avram. And Hashem commands him, Lech-Lecha, go, Ma'atzacha, from your land, Ma'oledtecha, from the place where you are born, Mibeis Avicha, from the house of your father, El ha'eretz asher ereka, to the land which I will show you. That's what the verse says. So this, in fact, is the first commandment of Hashem in the Torah to the person who we accept as the first Jewish person, which is Abraham. So with this, we can pose a question to this idea. The first commandment to the Jews should be something about how to serve God, and not about how he should go in some other, to do something else. For instance, to take a journey to a land. Surely that should be a second issue. It should be another issue, but not necessarily the first issue and the main commandment that he's given. And of course, you have to say that you have to start somewhere. So therefore, in the service of Hashem, you have to set up some sort of context or infrastructure or whatever it might be, and that is to go from somewhere, which in an idea is similar to the concept that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, is approached by Hashem. Remembering when Moses is approached by Hashem, when he sees the burning bush, Hashem tells him, he says, Moses sees the burning bush and says, well, this is something to investigate, and he comes close, and then Hashem tells him, be careful what you do, and you take off your shoes and approach here. The idea being that he says to him, leave the state, leave where you are, or leave what you are doing, and then approach here, which is the idea of, in Hebrew we say, su me'ra v'aseh tov, refrain from doing bad and do good. So in this sort of case, you could say that Abraham similarly is being told to do that same sort of thing. Abraham is being told, leave the country where you are and come to the positive country, which is Israel, the land of Canaan, right? And you could say that maybe that is the same format that Avram was being told. In other words, that really this address, the Lech-Lecha, is a preparation to what you need to do, right? And maybe it's even a part of what you need to do as a preparation. But in fact, what we are saying is that, in fact, there's something much more fundamental. Since this was chosen to be the introductory passage and the first time that we hear a commandment from Hashem to Abraham, it has to contain and it has to have a much larger inference, a much more important information request than what it is. That is just a preparation. It is not just a preparation, but in fact, it must be an essential component not just a preparation, but as an essential component to what Hashem is, Hashem wants out of the first Jew, right? And therefore becomes an instruction to us, a foundation, and in fact a beginning in how we are supposed to, in how man is supposed to serve God. Okay, so we can derive an answer if we look in a little deeper in this to this phrase. The first thing is that the idea of Lech-Lecha is really a idea that that Lech-Lecha means to go. He should leave from the place where he's born. So wouldn't it better to say right from the beginning, go to the place where I'm going to tell you? Why did Abraham need to be told, go away from this place? And even if you do, and why wasn't he told directly to the place which you will see? And even if we're going to say that's important to know where you're going, it's surely all the directions that he was given. That is to say, the directions that he was given, because it says, go away from your land, which is a general mode of, and then he's more particular about it, Hashem, from where the place where you were born, and then from your father's house. We're going from the general to the more particular to even more particular. Why was it necessary to address and say it in that sort of fashion, right? Why wasn't it brought in a why wasn't it more to just put it in a more direct sense, right? Okay, another question. And once you've already said it in that way, why not just say exactly the place where you are going to? Once you've already said that we're not going to one or the other, isn't one already included in the other? That is to say, first of all the addresses. And once I'm telling you to leave your land, doesn't it automatically that you're leaving your birthplace? And isn't it already included, or automatically you're leaving your house? If you're already told, go away from your land, you're already doing those things. So why was it necessary to say all those specific directions? And then if Hashem is already doing that, why is Hashem saying it in what is seemingly in the reverse order? Surely you should say from the place where you live, that is your father's house, and which is the place where you were born, which is your part of your land. Why not go from the particular to the general? Why is this said in this order? And what is the purpose of that whole expression, necessary? So our teaching is the idea that the point that Hashem is really telling Abraham, the point that Abraham is being shown, is that this idea, the idea of the instruction of Lech-Lecha, is really a preparation for every single Jew and for the Jewish nation as a whole to come to the giving of the Torah. The giving of the Torah is the ultimate instruction set for the Jewish nation, so they should be able to connect to godliness, and as part of how the nation has to become prepared to become a nation. So it means that this set of instructions, the Lech-Lecha ma'atzchem l'altechem ebeis avicha, is really a set of instructions to every single Jew in his divine service, and it is a journey of many steps, and that is many steps that requires a person to go beyond his regularity and to move ahead and his progression in his life. That is to say, Artsacha, that expression, your land, Maladiticha, your place of your birthplace, and Beis Avicha, and your father's house, really are three general ideas that a person needs to accept as he moves ahead in his spiritual endeavors. So, what is implied in those words? What is taught in those words? The idea that Artsacha, Malatecha, Beis Avicha are three statuses or three stages in a person's personal development. So in Hebrew, or in our understanding of what's Artsacha, what is your land? Your land is an idea of a place of where natural activities happen, meaning agriculture is a natural process. How people grow in a physical sense. The land and its produce grows in a physical sense, and the land and its growth pattern happens to have a natural organization that works or seems to work, right, without what it appears to be, without the input from godliness. It's nature. This is the way the world runs. This is how everything runs in this world. It's natural. This is the way it happens, right? So the idea of Artsacha implies your set of expectations that things will work normally, that things will work perhaps even without the input of godliness. Things happen in an ordinary fashion. So the first thing that Avram is told is that in order to reach the promised land, and every Jew is told that, in order to reach your own promised land, the first thing is that you have to move away from what you think is the natural order of things. That doesn't mean you do things out of the ordinary, but that you have to appreciate that in the eretz, in the land, or that is in the natural order of things, there is really, there is godliness everywhere, and that things are happening, right, is part of the blessings from Hashem. So therefore, the first thing that a person needs to do is move away from what a person thinks is the natural mode of existence. In order to become a Torah Jew and to become a Jew of Hashem's mitzvahs, a person has to move away from what is considered natural and the natural way, and that might even be what some people think as working in a jungle, right? In the Eretz, in your, in the natural mode. So a person has to move away from that sort of influence, that sort of style. That's the first step. So in order to progress, a person has to go the first step of moving away from the natural existence. The next step was Molerticha, from the place where you are born. The place where you are born, your physical surroundings, your friends and colleagues, the environment and the milieu which you live in, which is shaped by a lot of the culture and mores, expressions, expectations of the day, right? And those expressions and those expectations changes. The expectations of people, that's promoted by the different media expressions of what is normal, is not the same 5 years ago as it is this year, and probably won't be the same in 5 years' time. So what Hashem tells you is that you have to move away from what is your own personal natural tendencies of your oretz, of your own land. You also have to move away from the oretz is your personal one, your personal natural tendencies. Now, the next one, the place of your birth, is whatever's been given to you in your place where you were born, where you grew up, in your environment that's around you. That is, you have to transcend those influences. And the next stage is from your father's house, right? And this is a hint to that the lifestyle that you were introduced to that might not be conducive to everything that Hashem wants, as in the case of Abraham. His father was an idol worshiper, so he had to move away from his father's teachings. But it's teachings in general. That is, that even the intellectual teachings that a person has, and it might be his influence of his colleagues, or it might be the influence of his professors, or it might be the influences of his of not the social environment, but his intellectual environment, the place which is the originators of perhaps his philosophy of life that he has that he has adopted. Hashem tells the Avram, the father of all Jews, tells the Jewish people as their preparation for their own Matan Torah, because eventually Avram's people clan becomes the nation Yisrael, who accept Hashem's constitution on Har Sinai, that in order to have a complete union with Hashem, a person has to move beyond his natural tendencies, that is what he's born with, what he thinks is natural, the tendencies that he's been introduced to him by the people, the environment surrounding him, and even his education that he's had, whether it be in his father's house or whether it be in his high school or whether it be in his university, on the intellectual level. A person has to put those things aside and accept Hashem's path. When a person is devoted in an unconditional fashion to Hashem, surrendering his own personal preferences, surrendering his biases, surrendering his own intellectual calculations, and going beyond that and accepting Hashem as he's given us the Torah, then he'll come to the promised land. So going back to our questions that we asked, why is it necessary to have it in this order and not the other order? Because this order, as described, is a prescription how a person moves beyond his personal identity. It moves beyond the identity of his surroundings, and even moves past the identity of the philosophical engagement that he's had, even in an intellectual sense, and going beyond that and accepting God's commandment. And this is the reason why it's put in that order. Another question that we asked is, why didn't Hashem tell him exactly where he was going? And the answer being to that we are going to the promised land. So once you're doing these preparations of moving ahead and leaving behind the influences that we've just said, then the eventual destination, which is God's destination, doesn't have to be detailed to a geographical GPS directory place. We are going to wherever God tells us to go to, so that the direction and the land and the actual physical position is no longer relevant. It's to wherever the will of Hashem tells us to go. And this is the introduction of the first Jew to Hashem's will, that he has to put aside his own preferences, his own knowledges, his own environment, and accept what Hashem shows to him. And then when he does that, he moves from the Parsha, which is called Lech-Lecha, to the next Parsha. What's the Parsha after Lech-Lecha? The Parsha after Lech-Lecha is V'yeira, right? V'yeira Hashem, that Hashem appears to Abraham, right? There's big significance in that, right? Because once Abraham has achieved the directive of the expression Lech-Lecha, to go away, move ahead, go through those three transitional states that we've just said, and moved to the state where he's gone beyond his personal preferences, he's gone beyond his milieu of the people, and he's gone beyond even his own intellectual understandings, and he's taken and accepted God's will in totality, then he is deserving and he will receive God's revelation. Hashem appears to him. V'yaris Hashem, Hashem appears to him, right? So that's the movement from one stage, right, to the complete other stage. Okay, so I'll complete it over here and say that this is a beautiful teaching and a beautiful lessons for us. And
yes.
And I wish you well in all your, in all your endeavors.